let's say she gets anywhere north of 30%, it's big trouble for Donald Trump. He hasn't consolidated the base Republican Party. There's still a lot of Republican voters in very conservative states like Iowa and South Carolina who are looking for somebody else. And a lot of those voters have said if it's not Haley that's the nominee, they'll go back to Joe Biden. And that is devastating news for Donald Trump.
Let's catch up on the latest in the US presidential race. And Nikki Haley has vowed to remain in the contest for the Republican nomination, regardless of the outcome of the South Carolina primary, which is due to take place on Saturday, and where she is trailing behind Donald Trump. Difficult polls in South Carolina, which is her home state, on top of 3 consecutive losses to Trump, have fueled speculation that Haley could drop out of the race soon. But speaking to Fox News today, Nikki Haley accused her competitors of focusing more on themselves than the American people.
You don't win a general election where you're taking the side of Putin over our allies who stood next to us at 9/11. You don't win an election by mocking military members. You don't win an election by refusing to debate. You don't win an election by calling people names. That's not going to work. You win an election by touching hands, answering questions, and guess what? Making it about the American people and not about yourself. It is the problem Donald Trump has. It's the problem Joe Biden has. It's the reason over 70% of Americans don't want Trump or Biden.
Well, Donald Trump himself has appeared in a Fox town hall with Laura Ingraham, and Trump claimed that Haley is being funded by the Democrats to get back at him.
I don't think she knows how to get out, actually. I really don't. She did terribly in New Hampshire. She got the only vote she got was from Democrats. But she
has a lot of money behind her. What do they think they're getting?
Well, they're trying to hurt me because of the general election. So the Democrats are giving her money, and she's playing into the game. And I think she just can't get herself to get out.
Well, let's talk to Reed Galen, co-founder of the Lincoln Project and a former strategist for George W. Bush, John McCain, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Good evening to you, Reed.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Really good to have you with us. Nikki Haley insists she's not backing down. How long do you think she's going to last in this race, given that Donald Trump does seem to be way ahead when it comes to seizing that Republican nomination?
No, well, listen, campaigns don't end because they lose elections. They end in this contest in primaries because they run out of money. She, by all accounts, has a lot of money, both internal to her campaign and her outside help. And so I would say that as long as she thinks she can be viably campaigning both in South Carolina and then early next month, I think she'll stay in.
Yeah, South Carolina is her home state. We've got that primary coming up at the weekend, but it doesn't look as though she's going to make much of an inroad into Donald Trump's lead, does it?
No, but I think what it shows us is, once again, and we've seen this now in the first 3 contests, is that, let's say she gets anywhere north of 30%, it's big trouble for Donald Trump. He hasn't consolidated the base Republican Party. There's still a lot of Republican voters in very conservative states like Iowa and South Carolina who are looking for somebody else. And a lot of those voters have said if it's not Haley that's the nominee, they'll go back to Joe Biden. And that is devastating news for Donald Trump.
You are the co-founder of this Lincoln Project, which essentially does not want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee. But when you look at where he is in the race, do you accept that as things stand, it does look as though he's going to end up there as the candidate to take on Joe Biden later this year?
Oh, for sure. I think, and that's where I think we have to expand our imaginations a little bit. I have no doubt whatsoever that he'll be the Republican nominee. But if my job is to make sure that he doesn't win again, then having Nikki Haley in the race, whacking him on things like his mental acuity, his cowardice, his court cases, all of the things that she said in that clip you played, Russia, et cetera, and she's taking him on from the right where otherwise normal Republicans live, I'll take that as long as I can get it.
Yeah, we're hearing today that there's a warning to Donald Trump that he'll have some of his buildings in New York seized if he doesn't pay up this $355 million fine for fraud. although he is appealing against this fine. This is from the state's Attorney General, Letitia James, who's saying she's going to send in the bailiffs if Donald Trump doesn't pay up. But each one of these court cases just seems to spur certainly many in the Republican Party to greater loyalty towards him.
It does, but again, those are the people that are already loyal to him, and I would say that anybody who's not 100% bought in on him is unlikely to change their minds. And I think that, look, this costs him money, this costs his campaign's money, it costs him and his campaign's time. This isn't going to be over anytime soon. It's not going to be better for him, and he's not going to be better behaved. And so, while I don't think any of this will keep him off the ballot in November, it certainly is a massive distraction and a massive blow to his ego and a massive drain on his personal and campaign finances.
Yeah, I mean, that is a significant sum of money, and we've seen reports that some donors are actually pulling out. But is any of that of huge significance, do you think?
Again, I think that for him, again, he has to find a way to get independent and those Nikki Haley Republican voters back in his fold. And his behavior and his antics are not likely to encourage them to believe that he's a better choice, even if they're not fans of Joe Biden.
Where do you think this goes next? I mean, we've got so many different court cases that are still ongoing around Donald Trump. Could any of those cases actually prevent him from standing?
No, not this year. He's going to be on the ballot in November, and anybody who is worried about what he would do in a second term is encouraged to defeat him, should do all they can to make sure that he not only loses in November, but loses badly.
But at the moment, as things stand, I mean, we've seen some polls in some of the key states suggesting that he would beat Joe Biden. We've got a lot of those worries that, of course, were accentuated by that recent report about the state of Joe Biden's health and whether he's frankly too old to be running for another term in the White House. That is clearly going to play into Donald Trump's hands, isn't it?
It will. The question is, how much will it play into his hands, and how far behind is Donald Trump with voters he desperately has to have? And if he can't have them, he can't win, no matter what people think about Joe Biden.
There are quite a few people in the UK and indeed other parts of Europe who are very concerned about what a future Trump presidency might mean for US engagement in NATO, for example, for the US willingness to support Ukraine in the war against Russia. Do you think those concerns are well-founded?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think if it was going back to 2015 and 2016 with Russia's involvement, both with Trump personally and with our American politics, and on through now up till this very week, where it's now been discovered that Russia was behind the whole idea of Hunter Biden and all of the things that, Republicans have been claiming for years now that Joe Biden was involved in. I think it absolutely should be taken seriously. And I think there are a lot of Republicans who, especially older Republicans, they remember the Cold War. They did not think Russia was the good guy then. They don't think Russia's a good guy now. And so I think that this is one of those things where when a majority of the American public believes that, we should be supporting Ukraine in their fight against Russia, and you see that the U.S. House of Representatives here in America refuses to take up the funding bill because Donald Trump told them not to, this is bad news for Ukraine. It's bad news for America, bad news for the Western Alliance. But ultimately, I think it will come back to boomerang on Donald Trump because Americans are patriotic and they believe in democracy and freedom, and that's not what Donald Trump represents.
Reed Galen, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. Really good to speak to you. Thanks so much for joining us.